Should have won that game.
All right, so we're started.
Mhm.
Okay, welcome everyone to our chapter meeting for AUP, and I'd like to introduce our guest speaker today, Dr. Howard Bunzis. He's a professor of accounting at Eastern Michigan University and has performed a financial analysis on the University of Southern Mississippi. Um, with the help of the grant money from the American Association of University Professors Advocacy Chapter Mobilization Fund. Um, so are you ready to give your presentation, Howard?
I'm set.
Okay. I'll get
I'm all
off the
set.
screen here and you can take it over.
Yeah, I wish I could be down there. I've been to Mississippi before, if you could believe it or not. Been to Jackson at an AUP event many years ago. Was treated very nicely. It was very nice down there. So it's about 36 degrees and snowing here, so I could certainly go down there if I wanted to. It would be nice. Anyway, there's a lot going on here. So here's if people, I don't know how the chat works in here, but let me see if I could see the chat. But people could just yell out questions. I don't mind. There's only how many people are in here? 32. So it's not that many. So if people want to, and obviously I could save time.
Howard,
yeah.
just to let you know, they actually don't have the option to unmute themselves.
Oh.
So what we're going to do is have you do the whole presentation.
Okay.
And then at the end, we're going to stop recording and switch over to allowing some questions.
What if I put him to sleep, in the meantime? What if, if I don't want to do that to anybody? All right, I'll try to be as upbeat as I can, given that my godforsaken soccer team just did not win a game they were supposed to win. All right, I'm going to try. So I start out with the conclusion that USM. Do you guys go by USM? Is that the abbreviation you guys use? Could someone just say yes to
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right, is in solid financial condition and solid reserves, cash on hand, current ratio is good. There's a challenge here from my perspective because University of Southern Mississippi does not produce separate financial statements and doesn't have a separate bond rating. That's not unusual that they don't have a separate bond rating because they're part of a system. It is somewhat unusual that they don't produce the separate financial statements. There's a lot of things I'm going to talk about in here in terms of transparency that I think the chapter, I'm very happy to hear that the chapter is the one behind all this, as someone who's been, who bleeds AUP and has been with the AUP for my whole professional career. But there's a lot of things that I think you guys should be asking for and for things to change. And the 2024 financial report is either done and not being presented to the public, or they stopped doing it. Because 24 ended almost a year ago. The results are in because they're part of the Mississippi Institutions of Higher Learning. That system has some limited financial statement data, which I used, but it means that the people who work at your institution in the finance area have completed their work, and they're just not sharing it with us. Either they have it or they're not sharing it, or they stop sharing it, and either one is not a good thing. I don't like either one. But anyway, so I'm going to keep talking about the data issues, not for me, but I think these are things that you guys everyone should see. The system is in good shape. The system has a solid bond rating. And in some of our back and forth with Jeremy, I was asked we had a lot of back and forth over the last several months. I was asked to do some work, how's the system doing? That kind of came up, not that long ago. And so certainly it's very relevant, of course. And I have some things in here about the system, which you'll see. I think that the biggest issue is enrollment. Enrollment is declining, but then we saw this increase for the year we're currently in, which is very encouraging. The state appropriation is the largest revenue source, and it's increasing. And we've also seen an increase in first-time, first-year students for the last several years. On the expense side, definitely shifts emphasis management spending over instruction spending, decline in the hiring of tenure track faculty. USM does a lot of research, and if you could maintain yourselves as a research institution, you have to keep hiring tenure track faculty. In terms of the faculty salaries not keeping pace with inflation, today I put in, I'll do it at the very end, it'll be like a treat for you guys. I don't know, you guys are AUP members. Everyone here is probably an AUP member. So you may have seen the story or gotten an email from the AUP about the faculty salary survey for 2025. Well, I was fortunate enough to get the whole survey, to get the stats behind the survey. And I produced just at the end the 2025 faculty salaries for USM versus your peers. And we'll do that at the very end. So I threw that at the end of the document. This document, as you see, is 53 pages. The document I sent Jeremy last week was 52 pages. So we have an extra page to look at. The bad news, of course, is your salaries didn't magically rise versus your peers. Sorry to be, by the way, I am a New Yorker, if you guys can't tell by my accent. And so sarcasm sometimes comes out. I'm a huge sports fan, but and believe in the power of sports and college sports and all that, but it's not self-supporting at USM. USM is very similar to the institution that I teach at, Eastern Michigan, a regional public institution, not a flagship. And it's very difficult for schools like ours to succeed in athletics. And it's a whole other conversation, but certainly I'll just present the numbers. I think most impressive, I'm going to end on a good note, that of all the peers, USM has the highest percentage of undergraduates with Pell Grants. But impressively, the graduation rates for USM are in the middle of the pack. Usually there's a strong negative correlation between Pell Grant rate and graduation rate, but that's not as much the case for USM. So I think that's a success story that I don't see very often when I do this data. So let's just, we go through, there's a table of contents, but just get right to it. And I'm going to focus more on the graphs, and assuming that you guys either have this document or have access to this document. I know it's being recorded. This is yours to use however you like. So the good thing, this revenue distribution, you look at this pie chart, and the good thing about it is it's not dominated by one or two slices. Tomorrow morning, I'm doing a presentation for Sarah Lawrence College, which is a small private university in New York, and their pie chart looks nothing like this. Their pie chart is almost entirely dominated by tuition revenue. USM has the state appropriation as the largest revenue source, then tuition. The grants and contracts are a lot of different things. They run the gamut from Pell Grants. Pell Grants are grants from the federal government to cover the tuition of low-income students, and it is money. It's real income, and that's great. But it also, this green slice of the pie also includes all the research grants that are done. And no matter what, we could argue about indirect cost rates and what's going on with the federal government and reductions in grants and all those sorts of things. But there's no doubt that grants are very profitable for USM and for all universities. They're win-wins for everybody because they helps the faculty member, it helps society, helps the university financially. So that's why they're so important in many different ways. But you can see these are the three main slices. Auxiliaries, and I have in here definitions. Auxiliaries are housing, dining, mostly housing and dining, but also includes student union, bookstore, parking, athletics. All those things are also within auxiliaries, but it's dominated by housing and dining. You have a significant amount of residential students on your campus. So here, this chart looks at the revenue source. I go back to 2018. I always liked, in these days, you usually, when we first started doing this, a couple of us do these reports, we thought 5 years was more than enough. But I think when you go back 5 years to 2020, the problem with only going back 5 years is that the pandemic was in the middle of that year. So you really got to go back a year or two, in my estimation. A year or two before the pandemic. So that's what I've done here. And you could see the state appropriation really significantly increasing over this time. And we're going to compare the state of Mississippi to the other states in the country uh, in terms of their support for public higher education. The reason, to me, the reason why you guys called me is because of this. You guys called me because this is going down. I think that's my feeling. Your administration has gotten very nervous because of this decline. Now, we're going to look at this and we're going to see that, this decline is not that steep. It's certainly been covered, more than covered, by the increase in the other two main revenue sources. These are gifts and grants. These are gifts and grants that are given to the university that are mostly free to be spent. And they're very lumpy. They can be very lumpy. And you can see the drop in auxiliary revenue in around the pandemic. A little bit. Remember, the pandemic happened in 2020. In March of 2020 is when everything kind of stopped. So in that in the middle slash back end of the spring semester of 2020, when Rudy Gobert, the basketball player from the Utah Jazz, that moment started everything. And that's when everything started getting canceled right after that. And then the following year, for a lot of the year, students weren't on campus, but not totally. And now it's come back. You can see the level of auxiliaries is higher now in 24 than it was even before the pandemic in 1918. That's why it's so important to go back to these years before the pandemic. So we're certainly going to dig into these two revenue sources because we have information on them. It's not easy to find information on grants and contracts. They don't really give you very much, but we are going to be able to dig. We're going to dig into the state appropriation. We're going to dig into enrollment. First, we're going to start with tuition discounting. You often hear the phrase, "We're buying out." The university's buying students. Well, I'm sorry, there's no graph here. I mean, I am an accounting professor and CPA, so some of this stuff is going to be pretty number based, and that's why I said I don't want to put anyone to sleep. I'm going to try not to. So just bear with me when I go through these tables. I'm going to try to focus, like I said, on the graphs. Not that you guys can't handle it, you can, but you haven't looked at the stuff the way I live with this stuff. It's just not the same. It's not the same. It's not fair or appropriate for me to expect you to look at a table for the first time and just pick it up like that. That's not the way the world works. I'm aware of that. So I'm getting here with the discount rate, 38.4%. Here's the way, man, I try to explain this. The gross tuition and fees is like the sticker price. It's what you guys charge without any discounting, without any scholarships, without any fellowships. Then the scholarship allowances are all the breaks that students get on the way in for a myriad of reasons, obviously, from what they bring to the table to income level, etc. There's all sorts of reasons why we have that. And then that's the net is what they bring home. And the discount rate in terms of math, the 38%, here's my numerator, 53 million. Here's my denominator, 138 million. And you can't see that when I see a discount rate moving up 2-3%, that's a fairly significant move in 1 year. And from 2018, it's gone from 31% to 38%. There hasn't been significant increases in tuition prices. We'll see. It's just college, even at USM, where it's not, the tuition is fairly low versus peers, as we'll see, and nationally, it's still very expensive to go to college, and very few people have the $10,000 to $15,000 in a drawer at home where they could just use that, open the drawer, here's 10 grand, and I'm going to school this year. It's just not how things work. So the administration has had to increase the discount rate to affect enrollment. So it's a challenge. It has led some of the decline in tuition revenue. So this 93, 92 million, 88, 85, sorry to go backwards. That's what I'm seeing here. That's what these numbers are here. Sorry. That's what those declines are. Some of it, not all of it, but some of it. Obviously, enrollment's got a lot to do with it, but some of it is you're increasing the discount rate. I'm not criticizing or supporting. I'm just reporting what is. There's a lot that goes into a discount rate. Now, the administration may claim the discount rate's much higher. They often quote the discount rate for first-time students. This is for everybody. graduates, undergraduates, etc. So here, what I'm trying to get at here is the tuition and fees per the budget and the tuition and fees per the audit. And I get a lot of flack. Why don't you do the budget? Why don't you just look at the budget? Well, the budgets are not audited. They're based on accounting standards that are not standard. They could do whatever they want and what counts and what doesn't count. And so here's what I got. Just look at 24. The gross tuition and fees per the audited financial statements. And that this, by the way, the audit is the MIHL audit. That's where this came from, not the separate USM document, which doesn't exist, or it exists, but they haven't shown it to us. This is the net tuition, and then the tuition and fees in the budget is somewhere in the middle. So I get these answers of what's going on in terms of percentage changes that are really all over the map. Now, from 23 to 24, the budget and the actual moved similarly in a similar way, but not in the other years. It's very problematical to use the budgeted numbers. I don't know exactly what they're doing here. I'm not suggesting they're doing anything nefarious. I don't believe that. I just don't believe university administrators are evil people that are hiding money. I don't believe any of that. I just don't understand what they're doing because it's not being explained. Doesn't mean what they're doing is not. They're doing what they've always done, but it doesn't fit. I like when things from the budget come close to fitting the audit, and it doesn't do that here. You can see these numbers are kind of in the middle. So I'm not quite sure what they're doing. They're not using gross. They're not using net. They're using something in between. So it's hard for me to make inferences from the budget itself. We're going to look into enrollment, of course, coming up. So the state appropriation, this is what it is in the audit. Nice increases. The budget has general funds and then something called the Education Enhancement Fund, which is the way the appropriations come from your legislature. They come from two different buckets, basically. And these, you can see the numbers are fairly close to what I'm seeing here. So I made a little graph here of the state appropriation on the audited financial statements that come from MIHL, and then the USM budget. So I'm not ignoring the budget. I'm trying, and to me, yeah, they're close, but in a couple of years, yeah, not as close as I would like here. But to me, what matters most is that even in the budget, the year we're sitting in now, we're sitting here on April 10th, 2025, there's a significant increase in the state appropriation. The budget has an increase from 104 to 110 million in the state appropriation to USM in the current year we have now. Going forward, that's hard for me to know what's going to happen in 26 and 27. I'm sure there's gloom and doom from the administration on this, but I don't believe it. I think the state of Mississippi is doing very well financially, and if it wasn't doing well, they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't be increasing the higher ed budget. It's one of the first things to go when things aren't going well. So these are the changes in the state appropriation. You really see how the last couple of years have been pretty good. The reason why there's no blue bar here, we don't know the audit yet. We don't know because the year is not over yet. We're sitting in the middle not in the middle, but we don't know what the year is going to be. Now, the administration and the people that work there may have an idea of what this blue bar is going to be in terms of the state appropriation. But until I see it, we don't know. So, all right. Now, I just want to show you where things stand in Mississippi versus the entire country. So, per $1,000 of income, to me, what's more important is the per capita number. Because Mississippi ranks, okay, I'll say it, at the bottom in terms of personal income, you get weird results there. To me, this is more relevant. So it's still pretty good. Down here at the bottom, and I've done work with all these states, New Hampshire, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Vermont. Vermont, New Hampshire are like private schools. They provide hardly any state support down here. And these are really different numbers down here. These states are really different. So anyone who thinks that the state you live in now is not supporting higher education, yeah, of course you'd like it to be higher, but I think this is a pretty good metric to show that Mississippi is certainly in the top third-ish, 18th per capita. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I like that. That's nice. That's nice. So, where's my state? Where I live now, not so great. Uh, it's just hard. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. It's just we just can't seem to get past, in our state of Michigan. We just cannot. In Ohio, nearby, and Wisconsin's also down here. We just can't seem in the Midwest to get. Here's Wisconsin. We just can't seem to get legislatures to support public higher education, and we're going to see that in the tuition numbers. Obviously, Mississippi is a low-income state, but this is very encouraging to have it here. I'm not suggesting your legislature is great or not great, but it's certainly different than what I'm used to seeing. It's usually I'm usually working with the states down here. Tomorrow, New York, private schools are in Colorado as well recently. These places are doing poorly because these appropriations are so weak. So I'll just leave it at that. And again, what's most important for USM, though, what's most important, what's more critical than anything, is the upward slope of this. The upward slope. Obviously, things happened here. In terms of the appropriation from 17 to 18. From roughly 95 or 100 million down to the 80s. That's a big hit. But what's more important is that since that time, the appropriation, and obviously inflation may flatten this curve out a little bit, but since that time, the appropriation it's the highest it's ever been. And that's something. And again, I'm sorry to keep going backwards, but I want it's the number one revenue source. The number one revenue source is the state appropriation. And by the way, okay, let's talk about that. Let me get this chart out here. How many states is in the public sector is tuition? I mean, is the state appropriation bigger than tuition? Or the number one revenue source? Most of the ones here, most of the states that are up here, the number one revenue source is the state appropriation. Certainly not the case down here. Where I am at Michigan, Eastern Michigan, about 45 to 50% of our revenue comes from tuition. About 18% comes from the state. So it's much higher. The 29% is much higher here at USM. So let's dig into enrollment. I'm using something called a common data set as my data source. If you go on your institutional research website, you'll see this document that has this. It has the enrollment data. There are other. I'm not thrilled with the public institutional research in terms of the enrollment numbers. I think they could be better. They could be a little more forthcoming. So I used the common data set, which is on that site, which is fine. And so to me, we got this decline. I mean, let's just go along with the table. From fall 18, which is fiscal 2019, you can see enrollment 14,509, 14,1, then up to 14,6, and now down. 14,1, 13,5, 13,1. But here's the encouraging part. It's right here. And what's also encouraging, it's not reliant on either undergrad or grad. You can see undergrad over the last 4 years down, but now up a little bit. Grad, not as good, but not. It's a much smaller component of the total enrollment. I mean, the graduate enrollment is much smaller than you can see these percentages here. It's just not even. Okay, not even. It's about between 20 and 25%, between a fifth and a quarter. I guess the only way you can say that. It used to be more undergrad back here, but since these last couple of years has seen a decline in graduate enrollment. And I don't know if you guys feel that or know that or get that, but undergraduate enrollment did decline, but has now picked up. This is to me, this is really important when I see a big enrollment decline turn, and then that to me makes a big difference. That to me makes a big difference. So that's why I highlighted in this table. That's this 181 right here. This one here is this right here. That's 181 students from 10,012 to 10,193. That's 181 students. And overall, not much. I mean, it's less than 0.5%, less than 1%, but still, it's definitely a change. And you can see graduate enrollment went up a lot here, but now the last couple of years declining. And this is so these percent, again, the reason I'm here is because of these three numbers, these 3% changes. I firmly believe that. And things have turned in some, but you go back, we were going back all these years now. Enrollment does go up and down here, but this was a 3-year period was definitely worse than what's been in the past. So that's what got him nervous. But I think the increases I wrote here, I'm not just saying it to be, it stands out. It definitely stands out. There's no doubt. You don't see that every day. Then I broke up enrollment into 2 different time periods, 18 to 22, 22 to 25, and 18 to 25. And you can see the grad enrollment went down a lot here, but then went up a lot. Then grad enrollment suffered a little bit. And overall, the period, though, grad enrollment's done okay. And this is the first sub-period, the second sub-period, 18 to 25. But again, the 18 to 25 is being driven by these guys right here. The 22 to 25 and 18 to 25 is being driven by this. Those 2 years are pretty significant in terms of the decline. So I also broke down enrollment by a whole bunch of different factors that were reported. Full-time men, full-time women, part-time men, part-time women, undergrad, and the same thing for grad. And then the changes. So I'm sure those of you who work there know that it's almost 2 to 1 in female-male ratio. I'm not going to talk about why or how. That's beyond the scope of what I do, and whether that's good or bad, I'm just reporting what is. But the decline in men and women has been fairly similar. Undergraduate full-time is much more decline than part-time, but part-time is obviously a much smaller piece of things. On the grad side, grad part-time has seen some nice increases, full-time down a little, and then total full-time down, total part-time up. This is very encouraging data, and I put it in the summary, at the top of page 13 here. I put in the summary, first time, first year, and then international students. So first time, first year, first time applied, first time admitted, first time enrolled. I think the enrollee is much more important than the first two. I put these in there just as what matters is, are they coming here, yes or no? Are they coming to Hattiesburg, yes or no? And you could see 2000, over 2000, 1888, 1675, 1587. So that's a pretty significant decline around the pandemic. And then, now the last 3 years, we've had some nice solid increases in first year, first time students. Obviously, there's more than that. There's other students besides that, but I think it's a good indicator and a good harbinger for the future. I also looked at international undergraduate students in the common data set. And I don't always look for this, and obviously it's not a huge number. I mean, you got 13,000 students and less than 500 are international students, but it's still not zero. And I noticed the trend around the pandemic, 217 down to 154. But now we've got 3 straight years and a significant increase in international. Maybe there's a program there that you bring in some, I don't know. I didn't read anything that suggested that, but maybe there is. You guys could tell me if there's a program you have with a particular country, or maybe there's just an overall emphasis on bringing in more international undergraduate students, which is obviously very favorable. So in terms of the grants and contracts, again, to show you how important it is, in 2024, it overtook tuition as the second largest revenue source, but it's still there. And look at the budget. 29 million for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 straight years. What's the point? That's why budgets just I'm sorry. I'm not seeing that. Then what are you doing? What are you doing? So yeah. I'll just leave it at that. I said my piece on that. Okay, let's do the pricing. So the undergraduate tuition, in-state tuition, required fees, tuition and fees, food and housing. This is the sticker price. This may look like a lot. It's not for a major, for a major regional public. You guys are just doing research. It's just not a big number. And the changes in tuition, let's look at the graph. So I'm not going to rush through it, I promise. So the lime green is the change in price. And I'll let me say something about that. These changes, so 4.9% from 18 to 19, from 19 to 23.2. Around the pandemic, no change in tuition. Then for the last 4 years, 3.5, 2.7, 1.8, and now back up 4. These are higher than I see at other publics. However, there's two things that we know. There's two things about price of an item. There's the level, and then there's a change. This change of 4 may be higher than it was the last years, but the level is still low, as we'll see, compared to peers. This is still not a high level for the undergraduate in-state tuition, which is the majority of the students the majority of your students are in-state undergraduate. That's the biggest chunk of your students. Obviously, there are out-of-state grad students and out-of-state undergraduate students, but the majority are undergraduate in-state. And the orange and black stuff is the enrollment change. And the darker green is tuition revenue. And again, it's these darker green bars that have gotten the administration nervous. We don't know the dark green bar for 25 because we're sitting in the year right now. We're three-quarters of the way through the year. Again, the administration may have an idea of what it is, but they're not hiding anything by not telling us. There's no reason until the audit is done in the fall to come out with that number, and we'll know that when the MIHL financials come out in the fall or early in 2026, we'll know. Obviously, they're going to know before that. If they wanted to share, they could, but now they can't. I mean, as we sit here in April, there's nothing for them to share because the year is not over yet. But again, this graph could be, to me, I like this graph because it tells a lot of different stories. It's telling the price story at one level. It's telling what they take home, and it's also bringing enrollment in. So it's all part of it. So that's why this graph encompasses a lot of different factors. Now we're going to look on the expense side. The reason why these reports of mine take so long is because there's just not one way of doing this. There's 3 different ways of breaking down expenses. Something called the functional expenses, the natural expense distribution, and then salary only. So let me explain what all these are. And I think I have some definitions in this report. I hope I do. These functional categories are standard categories used in higher education, both private sector, private universities, and public universities. And the main administrative category is institutional support. That is the main category for administration. However, academic support is dominated by 2 things: the deans, the deans/associate deans, and the library. The library is built in. All the costs, the librarians and all the costs associated with the library are in the same bucket, in the same category/bucket called academic support. Whether you think they should be or not is another story. Again, auxiliary is housing, dining, student. It's the cost to feed people. It's the cost to house them and watch them to make sure that they're behaving correctly and those sorts of things. It also includes athletics is in here as well. And we're going to look at athletics There's student aid. Public service is the media arm of the university, all the media that they do and all the outreach and all that. Depreciation is estimated costs and wear and tear. And student services are mostly counseling and advising are built in there, but there is some advising and academic support as well. And there's some softness as to what counts in these categories. I think as I describe these categories and look at the numbers, a couple things I'd like you to take home, or consider. USM, and we only have through 2023. We do not yet have the 2024 functional distribution, as the system does not report this in the 24 audited financial report for USM has not yet been reported. So there you go. I'm hoping that it comes out like tomorrow is my guess. It probably will be, for all I know. Germany, we tried, we looked at it, tried, we asked, who knows? Anyway, I think a couple of things. In 23, the last year we have full data, USM was a $367 million operation. That's all the expenses for the university. It's how much it costs to run the place. Obviously, it's a very large institution. 13,000 students, it's not a small place. And I think surprisingly, the general public thinks that instruction is 90% of the cost, but you could see the research is very high because there's a lot of research being done at USM. A lot of the faculty obviously are involved in research. Auxiliaries is the cost of housing and dining, all the costs involved in that. That's administration and all these other costs. So there's a lot that goes into it. So you get this pie chart that looks like this, that has a lot of different slices. Yeah, instruction is the biggest one, but it's not the dominant one. Only a quarter. So this is what it looks like over time. Disturbing that the percent to instruction went up a little from 22 to 23, but still disturbing that it's going down in general. Still not the trend you want, in my estimation. The natural expense distribution, how does that differ from, make this a little bigger so you can see it better, that's better. How does the natural expense, here we break things up into these categories. And these are not standard. Every university picks their own. Some places combine salaries and benefits. Thankfully, USM does not. Contractual services, for lack of a better phrase, outsourcing. As consultants. So but even the food service, which is probably outsourced, is in here. But so is all the consultants that USM hires, if they hire a lot of consultants. I don't know if you guys feel as if there's a lot of consulting going on there. You guys could tell me if you think that's an issue. But one of the things, one of my recommendations, if I'm allowed to say this, I mean, I'm just trying to tell you what it is, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents in where I think it's okay and not being too heavy-handed. I would like to know what's in the $72 million. And why is it so much bigger than it was 6 years ago or 7 years ago when it was $50 million? What's in this thing? Is it consulting costs? I mean, is that what it is? What's in here? If it's all just feeding people, okay, but I don't think that's all it is. I think there's a lot going on here. So I think you should ask the administration, please tell us why consulting costs have gone, even from 52 million, why are they so high? And why they 72 million, the highest they've been. What's going on here? What's in this contractual services, which is just under 20% of total expenses. So now these two together, salaries and fringes, I put this together down here, 61.2%. There's rounding, but that's what that is. You can see it hovers around 60%. That's pretty standard at a university. You always hear, 90% is people. Well, no, not really. 60% is people. Not 90, 60. And that's what the natural distribution tells us. And here's a graph. A little easier to see in a graph. The last way we look at things is we look at these categories. So these functional categories, sorry to go back to the first one. These functional categories have it's not just salary in here. It's not just benefits in here. think of the projector in your classroom, and a new bulb has to go in the, let's say a bulb wears out in the projector in your classroom. That's in instruction. They allocate and estimate a whole bunch of costs, plant costs, utility costs that go into instruction. So what this last breakdown does is say, okay, no allocation, no estimation, just purely what do we pay people? What are the employees paid in these categories? And so here you get to see what's going on. So in 2023, the last year we have full data, $158 million got paid to everybody who was an employee at USM. Of that 158 million, 66 million went to instruction, which includes part-time, full-time faculty. Does not include deans, associate deans, department heads. Hard to know if they split their salary. Department head does some teaching and does some administrative work. They may split their salary between instruction and academic support. It's hard to know that. But still, over this period, from 18 to 23, there's institutional support, the main admin. When we're talking president, vice presidents, provosts, that whole category of people are in there. And it's gone from 11 million to 14 million, a 22% increase, much more than the increase in instruction over that time. So this 6% is from 62 million to 66 million, a 6% increase, whereas institutional support's gone from 11 and change to 14 and change, a 22% increase. All the salaries have gone up 9.5% in this time. And instructional salaries have gone up less than up most other salaries. So now we're going to look at performance in terms of revenues and expenses, revenues versus expenses. And we have a whole bunch of different metrics. We'll boil down to two of them. Net operating cash flows, which basically takes out, what I'm doing here is basically taking out the non-operational, non-cash things like depreciation. Then operating income, again, this is what's got them nervous. So, but even though we had negative operating income, we have positive cash flows. Why? These include non-cash expenses, like depreciation is a whole chunk of that. Depreciation, just to show you, it's not nothing. If you look at the natural expense distribution, depreciation, just under $20 million. That's an estimate of the wear and tear. There's no cash spent. It's not deferred maintenance, that BS term that administrators use all the time. Depreciation is just an estimate of the wear and tear on buildings. Almost $20 million. You can see it's consistently that. It's a non-cash expense. So that's the big difference between the bars on the left and the bars on the right. In terms of auxiliaries, the main reason that the red bar is above the blue, the red line is above the blue line, is athletics, as we'll see in a minute. It's a deficit every year, but housing and dining generally in the black, not athletics, as we'll see. Athletics runs a deficit about 10 to 15 million a year. So you take out a 10 to 15 million dollar deficit, all of a sudden auxiliaries become profitable. I'm not advocating for the elimination of sports at USM. As I think I told Jeremy earlier on, one of my good friends here at Eastern Michigan went to Southern Miss, and he's obviously a huge fan. So I know from him, from Jackie Ray, how important sports is to USM and how important it is to so many people in the community there. So I'm not suggesting you get rid of it, but I'm just going to show you where it's at in a second. Okay, so number of faculty. The common data set just breaks them down between full and part-time. You can see most of your faculty are full-time. We're going to talk about that versus peers. You guys use part-time faculty much less than peers, as we're going to see. I'm sorry to keep talking about what we're going to see. It's just natural. And then non-tenure track versus tenure track. So I haven't, the tenure track decline is not nice. It's not a huge number, but it's still declining. It was 173, and it's not that anymore. Obviously, people move from this to that. But the reason why this is not keeping up, when people move from tenure track to tenured, Are they, and then people move from tenure to retirement, are they all being replaced? This data I'm looking at says to me that when people retire at USM, when a tenure faculty member retires at USM, they're not one for one replaced by a tenure track faculty member. There's some of that going on, but I think I'm viewing this. I see it as selective. If that, I don't know if you guys have that experience, but that's what the numbers are telling me. You guys could tell me in the quick Q&A whether that is really what's happening, whether there is one for one replacement or something less than one for one replacement. So we'll leave it at that. Okay, faculty salaries versus inflation. You guys love this stuff. I did use the AUP at first, and there's just too many peers that didn't report to the AUP, so it made the comparisons difficult to do. So I just used iPads, which should be the same numbers, by the way. They're often not, of course, because remember, this data is not my data. This is data that the USM administration submits to the federal government. iPads is the federal government, the U.S. Department of Education, as it does exist. It's not been eliminated. It does exist as we speak. Or when they submit it to the AP salary survey, it's the same people who are submitting the data to the federal government on salary data and everything else, a number of faculty, all that. The same people. Your Office of Institutional Research is submitting that data to the federal government. You can see your faculty salaries in general have not kept pace with inflation. I have a whole thing I'm not showing you guys. It's not that I don't want to hide anything. The salaries for iPads and the AUP not matching. Maybe it's a timing issue. It shouldn't be. Not quite sure what's going on there. Something I'm not thrilled about, but these are the iPads numbers. Now we get to the non-instructional employees. These categories and the way they're presented the way they show up in iPads. These are the standard categories. And I think I have somewhere in here what they mean. Management is management. Now, they show management going down. All my yellows are flags, big changes that are hard to explain. Did they get rid of 112 people in business and finance operations? Did they increase 100 people in this? Did they get rid of 27 librarians? Did they get rid of 17 salespeople as they're described? Maybe they did, and maybe they didn't. The number of people went down just a little. But obviously, from here to here, there's a significant amount of categorization changing that happened here. And then it occurred again here. Research went from 23 to 129. Computer engineering and science went from 203 to 110. Again, these are things that need to be explained. It's hard for us and for me as a researcher doing this to make inferences from this table, which is an important table, from when I see all these significant changes. And there may be good reasons for them, but I'm seeing too many. I'm seeing too many for my liking, and too many, much more than I usually see. It occasionally happens, but not like this. It's a lot of changing going on. My guess, if you ask me, is that the people who were in this office, institutional research, they probably turned it over. Sometimes that office reports to the provost. Sometimes that office reports to the president. Sometimes that office reports to a different vice president. There could have been a change in reporting structure. There could have been a change in personnel. There could have been a change in how some items are just determined. But these are the kind of things that, to me, if you guys are on this call, you care about the place, you want to know what's going on here. So anyway, these are the average salaries of these different categories. The average management person makes $124,000. The all ranks faculty makes $74,000. It's the average faculty member from all the ranks, full-time, makes that. And all the other employee groups make that. I'm just going to sit silent, take a little drink, let you guys look. Okay. Class size, I didn't find much change in class size. The number of sections, the pandemic, who knows what was going on there. I don't see much change. The really big classes, my guess is the reason why class size is not changing in Hattiesburg, I just think there's probably limited. The physical space is probably not changing all that much. So because of that, I don't think you're changing class size that much. Degrees conferred, very nice increases in degrees. Very solid graduation rates for a university like yours. That takes in so many Pell Grant students. My university takes in a similar amount of Pell Grant students. We do not have the graduation rates you have. Ours is much lower. Ours is here. You guys are 10% higher than us, and you don't take in a very similar percentage of Pell Grant students. So I don't know what to say. I'm not saying you're better than me, you're better than us, but you're doing something that we're not doing. So that's why I find that so impressive, because I know what it's like to work at a university with a high percentage of Pell Grant students, and these are very solid graduation rates for that population. We have such a high population of Pell Grant students. This, to me, is the one thing that administration and faculty should be working on together. You lose 30% of your students after 1 year. They don't come back. Is financial the reason why? Is that the reason why? Is it not the right fit? Are you guys doing enough in year one? Obviously, it's not a faculty prerogative to watch over all the students, but I think it's something that faculty know the students and know what's going on. A lot of the faculty, especially those of you who teach first-year students, you know what's going on there. And I think that's something. I think you could really increase these graduation rates if this and this rate hasn't changed all that much. You can see, fall 23 back fall 24. I don't know the fall 24 back 25 rate. That's a lot. That's pretty high. Not that ours is any better. It's not. But this is about to. But I think more can be done here, and good things are happening here. So some better things should happen here. This rate should be higher, in my estimation. Okay, sports. I love sports. The night, the night database has all this data on athletics, and I'm just going to go to a couple of graphs to show you athletic expenses, direct athletic revenues, not the student fees that they charge the students. They charge a student fee as a percentage of every credit hour they take, and whether the students go to the games or not, they get charged. And the deficit. You can see the deficit hovers between 10 and 20 million every year. And this graph tells the whole story. These are the individual revenue items. They all of these are the direct revenues from athletics. They all add up to this. These are the expenses. Hello? I'm a little snotty, so I get a little snotty. Competition guarantees, and when USM gets paid to play SEC schools, yeah, you play them like we play Big Ten schools. We don't win. I'm sure you don't win either. I mean, occasionally, maybe once every couple of years, you beat an SEC school every now and again. But the media and NCAA TV money is not coming your way. NIL, I don't think, is much of a factor because you're not giving it out because you don't have it to give. I don't think it's changed anything really in terms of. I don't think the NIL money is changing schools like USM and regional publics like where you are and I'm at. And there's some donor contributions coming in, more than $5 million, but it's just you're spending. You can see the increase in spending. At 23 last year, we had data $30 million in expenses, $15 million in revenue. That just won't cut it. So. All right, let's look at the balance sheet. Let's look at some reserve ratios. See the time. I'm going to be cognizant of the time. It's a solid balance sheet. Yeah. Assets are going up. Liabilities kind of flattish. This could be reserves. This $300-something million could be reserves. Doesn't mean USM's in great shape because this is a strong balance sheet, but it's a good place to start. And we're going to break down all of this. So I'm not going to get into these accounting adjustments that I make that are made by MIHL. These are the same adjustments. Just suffice it to say that The system makes these adjustments. Howard Bunsen did not create these adjustments. MAHL makes these. Basically, what we're adjusting for is the fact that the pensions, the pensions you get and the fringe benefits, these are obligations of the state, not of USM, even though they're on, and they are included on both the USM balance sheet and the state's balance sheet, which obviously is not the case. So that's why.
Hey, Howard, I'm
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but you don't feel like you have to be rushed. This
Okay.
is being recorded, so like I'm really entertained by this, and I love how you're telling the story behind the data, and I think you're right about a lot of things. Also, after this, we might have a different meeting where it could be more open and you could talk to people, a real Q&A.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, I'm really entertained.
And I'm not rushed, but I'm also, I've been in the audience, and I don't want to, I think there's a pace I want to go at that.
Okay, sure.
If I don't go at a decent pace, I'm not joking. You guys will fall asleep on me. You want me to go through?
Okay.
Could you imagine me going through this table item by item? Oh my God, I put myself. But
all
it's
right,
here.
Dylan, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry.
That's all right. The table's here for, I don't know, because I had to do it. But anyway, that's the adjustments we make. And this is how we figure out what reserves are. What we're trying to get at is, okay, there's about between 350 and $400 million of net assets. Net assets is the difference between red plus green equals blue. How much of these net assets are reserves that the administration could freely use to deal with crises, et cetera? And that's what this chart tries to get at, and that's what this discussion is trying to get at. So we have these different categories, these restricted expendable at net assets. These are assets set aside for future scholarships, debt service, student loans, capital projects. And they have to be spent on those items. They cannot be spent on faculty salaries. However, your system office and Moody's includes this category as part of reserves because it is so good to have money set aside for clear, definitive needs that are important for the university. Future scholarships, servicing debt, making sure students' loans are available for students, and capital projects. These are obviously all very important items in the health of a university. And to have those funds set aside, even though you can't spend them on anything other than what those funds are for, is really nice to have. Also, if I could, the university will claim that the reserves are not free, that they're in the system office, or that they're in the colleges, or that they're spoken for. But if there was a no way you can get out of it commitment, the external auditors, I missed my L there, sorry. The external auditors, who are they? Those are the people that are auditing the MIHL financial statements. They wouldn't put them in this category. They wouldn't put them here. They put them either there or there. So free is free. And so let's look at the assets. Let's just look at the graph. So cash on hand, cash and investments, not the foundation. So the foundation, none of the above includes $165 million in investment assets in the University of Southern Mississippi Foundation. There's $165 million sitting in the foundation. That's not what this is. This cash and investments, these, which are now $191 million, short-term investments, the endowment, other long-term investments, is because every year USM takes in more cash than it spends. Every single year. And sorry, you said I have time, Jeremy, so here I'm going to go back. If you remember this graph here, net operating cash flows, they're bringing in more cash than they're spending every year. What are they doing with that cash? They're doing what responsible people do who run organizations like this, who run large organizations. They invest it, and they earn a return on it. The capital assets are most of your buildings. The flatness of this suggests that, now I haven't been on your campus, but this tells me there has not been significant new construction projects in the last several years. You guys can tell me if I'm wrong, but that's what this is. That's what the data is telling me. But this is nice to have, and this is a solid asset base. But again, it does not, and not even including the foundation, which is kind of over there and off limits. Not even including, not a single dollar in the foundation is included in that $191 million. So the foundation, the $165 million that the foundation has is not a single dollar of that is part of that 191. Now, what the foundation does do, it provides some support for the university. Well, it provided $10 million of support for USM in 2024. So 2.5% of the expenses of USM were supported by the foundation. Not exactly large, but still not zero either. So that's what the foundation does. In terms of reserves, most of them are unrestricted. That's the dark green. And in general, they're growing, though a little flatness the last couple of years, 176, 175, 173. I wouldn't call that the end of the world. They're mostly unrestricted. They're mostly growing. Does not include a dollar having to do with nothing from the foundation is included in here. So that's good. Again, I'll just leave you that graph. It's solid to see that. This is why the system, as we're going to see, we're going to look at the system ratios in a minute. The ratios, these kind of ratios involved in these reserves are strong. And the system has similar ratios on reserves that are strong, which is why the system has a good bond rating. They don't just give those out. I don't give them out. And this graph, if you want to know how the university is doing as well, I mean, is USM, this is USM only, this isn't the system. Is USM doing well? Are they in good financial shape? Just show people this graph. Debt down, reserves up. That's good. We like that. So it's a simple story, but a nice story, and a good story, and a true story. So there you go. Now I have all these ratios that I'm using here. Again, and a lot of this impetus came from that one that Jeremy, you may have viewed it as a side comment, but I thought it was pretty important that someone, I don't know if it was one of you or one of your colleagues who asked about the system officer and how things are. So that's why in all these ratios, I'm bringing in the system ratio, the USM ratio, and the target that the system talks about. This all comes from the system data. So I'm bringing all this data in, putting in the USM data, and these targets are system targets, and the red line is where the system is at. And again, I understand you guys aren't the system, but I do think it's important that we see where things are. So the reserve ratio is solid. It's way above the 40% target. This means the 40% target. What does it mean? It means that at 44.3%, which is what this, we don't have the system number for 24 yet. They haven't done all that calculating yet. They do a whole separate calculation on all this stuff, so it's easy for me to see. So I don't have to do anything. They just tell us what it is. It's nice. 44.3%. That means there are what's called expendable net assets, which is another fancy word for reserves, on 391 million of reserves. That's 44%. Numerator, denominator. You multiply that by 12, 5.3 months of expenses in reserves. That's a solid amount. Basically, anything above 4 months is considered good. USM and the system are both in the 5 range. A little bit down the last year, but still not dangerously down. It's certainly higher than much better than things were. Where USM was below that level in 18 and 19, right at the target level in 20, and it's been above. So this to me is a really important ratio. It's used by the bond rating agencies significantly. It really tells a story. The current ratio just is current assets versus current liabilities. I mean, is the place broken out? Do they have any cash lying around? And clearly, USM and the system have twice as much current assets as current liabilities. To me, this ratio is much more important than this one. They're both solidly above target, but this one is the one I really hang my hat on as opposed to this one. This is just, they have cash lying around, no doubt. You guys get your automatic deposit? I mean, I don't know if you guys I got my email today on my automatic deposit. You guys probably did too. Don't worry, it's good. You check, the money's going to be there. That's what this is saying. So it's not an issue. Cash on hand, same kind of thing. It's nice to have. Again, it's a nice ratio. It's not critical, definitely, but it's nice to have more than the target for both the system and USM even being some years worse in the system and other years better, but better recently. Something called the viability ratio. They didn't give a target on this one. And the target ratios are generally somewhere down here, but they didn't give the specific target that I would like, that I could hang my hat on. They kind of mealy-mouthed around it, but still, there's more reserves than debt. That's good. So that's nice to have. And they call something called a capitalization ratio, which is just a fancy word for net assets as a percentage of assets. Again, net assets equals liabilities plus net assets. So their target is way down here at 50%, and that's a low. They have a target range on this one, 50 to 85, and both the system and USM in yellow or orange are in the middle of that range, doing fine. Here's where things aren't as great, and again, why there's so much nervousness is the operating income ratios. You could see in 22 and 23, both the system and USM in orange are below this low. They have a low benchmark and a high benchmark. You were way above it in 21, and kind of, so it really moves quite a bit. It's moving because tuition revenue has been moving in not a great way, and also there was a lot of federal and state money from COVID grants that all died up here. That dried up as well. But I think with the enrollment bouncing back up, I'm pretty confident this yellow line is going to bounce and be in positive territory. And with enrollment up, the state appropriation up what it is, I'm pretty confident this yellow line is going to be positive for 2025 for USM. Can't speak for the system, but definitely for USM. So what I concluded on the bottom of page 37, given the solid levels of cash reserves and given what's been happening in 25, state appropriation, enrollment, the case for draconian cuts or any cuts to the core mission seem unnecessary. I don't think I'm being dramatic in saying that. I firmly believe that. More ratios. Again, I'm just trying to give you guys a full story here. I know there's a lot here. Just try to bear with me. Debt service coverage went into the questionable territory in 23 and 24. The system doing better than USM. These are principal and interest that's assigned to them. The USM doesn't borrow money on its own. The system borrows money and then allocates the debt to the different institutions. That's a lot of system offices work that way. My university, Eastern Michigan, we're not part of the system. If Eastern Michigan wants to borrow money for a new building, Eastern Michigan goes to the bond market and borrows the money itself. If USM needs to borrow money for a new building, you guys go to the system office, who then makes the case to the legislature to try to get some capital money, and if not, goes to the bond markets. MIHL goes to the bond markets, not USM. So these are all allocated these principal and interest payments are allocated payments. Technically they're paid, but it's kind of a funny money thing. But they are allocated to the university, to USM, by the system office. And these are, you can see they're pretty standard, pretty stable. $11-12 million, somewhere in there, is your debt service every year. And that's your operating income. You like it to be more than 2, more than 1.5. Not quite there. So I have summary of ratio analysis. The system has an AA2 bond rating, the third highest, and that's the link for that, and the date that happened. The rating is not directly related to USM, but USM has solid liquidity and reserves. The declining operating was decided by the bond rating in late 24, but it was not a downgrade. So they noted it not that long ago. They see it. Everyone's this, and this is not a secret. I'm not hiding it. I'm showing it. It's not a secret. These things are not secrets. But they still didn't change the rating because there's so much strength in these other ratios, especially this one. And S&P really likes the cash on hand thing. But I mean, Moody's likes the cash on hand one. I should tell them every university's got it. And overall, the recent increase in enrollment, stated prorate should lead to recent reversals, what I just said before. All right, last section, I added all this from the first time, from about 2 weeks ago, week ago or so. These are your peers. Do you think these are the right peers? Well, that's what I try to do here. So I'm on page 40 here. I'm trying to look at who these peers are in terms of where they're from. Where are they located? Do they have a medical degree? Do they have a hospital? What's their Carnegie classification? And you could see USM is in Mississippi, obviously. There's 4 from Ohio, which I don't think borders Mississippi. I could be wrong. That was a joke. 2 from my state of Michigan, my home state of New York, made it even with 1. That's Albany, which is obviously our capital. And regionally, more from the Great Lakes in the Southeast, which is not great for my taste, but that's the way it is. You guys are called, Hattiesburg is called a small city. Are you objecting? Smirking? Accepting? No one's got anything to say about that? Okay.
I don't know. I mean, we're probably in the category from small to medium or something. If you count, it's because we've got suburb communities that take our population.
The distant ones. Who's distant? Let's get to one who's distant. Central Michigan. I could tell you Mount Pleasant. My wife's from that region. I'm not going to say middle of nowhere, but yeah. So yeah, that's accurate. I haven't been to Hattiesburg, but been to Jackson. Jackson certainly is a pretty big city. Obviously, the capital. But Bowling Green, Fringe. That's about 70 miles from us, where I live. It's a 1 or 2 stoplight town in Bowling Green, but it's about 2 hours from Cleveland, so hour and a half. So it's not that close to anything. So that's how they come up with that stuff. And the research. So this is what Carnegie uses for the classifications now. R1, R2. That stuff's still out there, but this is what they really use in their website. So doctoral very high is what you guys are. 9 and 13 peers are doctoral high. So you're in a group of schools that are doing research. So I think they make sense at some level. So I look at some other characteristics to see. So I looked at enrollment. You guys are small, next to last, in terms of, I sorted this on total enrollment. You're 21st out of 22. It's sorted on this column here. And it's 1 year behind because I don't have the 2025 for all the peers. Obviously, I have it from USM, but not for the peers. You're 19th in undergrad enrollment, 17th in grad, 13th in the percent of students that are undergrad, 10th in grad. So you're kind of middle of the pack in terms of your mix, but smaller than most. In terms of enrollment changes over this last period, where you've had a 9.4% decline in enrollment over this time period, well, of the 22 peers, 5 have had a positive change, 17 including USM, so 16 of the other 21 have had a negative change. Your change of 9.4%, the peer mean change is 10, a drop of 10% in enrollment. The median is 9.7. So your enrollment drop is a little less than average, but certainly kind of middle of the package. Though you're smaller, that's what these two are saying. You were smaller then, you're smaller now. You're smaller in 18, you're smaller now. But the decline has been pretty similar among the peers. You can see Central Michigan. Where I work, by the way, we're minus 37.9. Lucky for them, we're not the smallest in the state, so we've lost that percentage of enrollment. It's pretty grim. It's pretty grim. Okay, tuition and the state appropriation as percent of revenue. So tuition, you can see the Ohio schools lead the way. Cleveland State and Bowling Green. That's what percent of their base of their current tuition, of their not including restrictive stuff or state capital appropriation stuff, is from tuition. You can see it's pretty high at 45. And the state appropriation, you guys, this is using 23's data. You guys were here, so you guys are kind of middle of the pack in both. A little better, a little higher than the mean, which is good. Not great, but good. Still pretty solid. In terms of tuition, definitely on the low side. So I have in-state tuition and fees, out-of-state tuition and fees for 2024. USM, you ranked 22nd, you ranked last in out-of-state. So the ratio is out-of-state to in-state. You can see the average school is almost twice as much. You guys only charge 20% more for out-of-state students than in-state students. And so this is what I wrote down here. If I got this from the common data set, 4% of USM first-year students out-of-state, this is right in 2025, which is fall 24. 4% were out-of-state. This was 29% in 17. 13% of undergrads from out-of-state, it was 16%. So this is all undergraduates and then first-year students. So there's definitely a decline in out-of-state students. I don't know if you guys feel that, notice that, know about it, see it, but that's what the data is showing me. That's when I said earlier, most of your students are in-state. That's why I got that conclusion from this data that I'm highlighting here. But still, you're still charging USM the in-state and the out-of-state tuition compared to these. Not that you're competing against these peers necessarily for students. That's not how this peer group was chosen. This peer group was chosen because your administration just decided to choose this group. We're going to look at faculty salaries. Coming up. Okay, this is the salary-only component of the expenses. What percent of salaries are spent on instruction? So in 2023, USM spent 42% of the salaries on instruction. The peer mean is a little higher. You guys are towards the bottom of this group. That's not good. Institutional support, you're also towards the bottom. That's the main and admin category. But research, 8th in research spending. You can see a lot of these single-digit ones. So these schools that spend heavy on instruction don't have much research. You guys definitely doing more research than the majority of the peers, which I think you probably knew. These categories here, all three of these are admin type of categories. This is housing, dining, student union, bookstore. Other just doesn't matter much. Though you do have 5% in other. And there's only 3 schools that have anything significant in other. Most have 0. Most put them in. Most universities in this peer group put the salary expenses in one of these buckets. For some reason, 5% of the 100 million or so, I think it's $6-7 million because of that other. Who knows? Why is it not? And that would change things if this money, some of these percentages were, if some of this money from other was put in. Does it go here? I don't know. Should it go here? I doubt that, but it's hard to know. That's why it's hard to get a real good picture when you see this kind of stuff. 3 schools, Hawaii Manoa, Southern Miss, and New Mexico State, have significant percentages of other, which is something I never like to see. Okay, here we go. I'm going to make this small so you can see it all on one page because you need to see all this on one page. So sorry if it's too small. I don't know what to tell you. So I sorted this on all ranks. So this group is sorted by the last column, and you are 21st out of 22nd in 2024 in the all rank salaries. 11th out of 18 in instructors. Not all the schools put categories of instructor. It's hard to, but 19th in assistant salaries, 20th in associate, 20th in professor. 19.5% below, 17.5% below, 15% below. All ranks almost 18% below. I'm sorry. I know. Look, where I work is the same thing. So I know what it's like. I don't know how you feel about this. I can't not show you this. I mean, maybe you knew this. I don't know, but here it is. I tried to wait to the very end before you started throwing things at me, at your computer, or at my head. Then I looked at the change from 18 to 21. So, okay, how have things gone? Well, in 18, professors were 17,000 behind. Now they're 23,000 behind. They've lost ground. They've lost 6,000 of ground over this 6-year period. Associates have lost. Assistants have lost. Instructors have gained. There's not that many of them, but they've gained. Overall, all ranks, you lost. Each one has lost. Professors have lost an additional couple of percent. Associates, assistants, all ranks have lost 2%. So it's low and it's getting worse. I'm again, I don't mean to be mean, but I don't know how else to say it. You want me to ignore these, this data? That's not fair. It's not right. You guys hired me to do this. I'm doing it. So, and I work at a place. Our salaries are lower than this. If that means anything to you, so there you go. I don't know if it matters to you. Probably not. So I put things in graphs. 18 is where you were versus peers. The pink is worse than the blue, except for the instructors. And this is percentage-wise. Your salaries are 15% below peers. They were, and now they're almost 18% below peers, depending on the rank, but overall. It's not much, this is pretty these three are mapping right into that. And I graph the all ranks salary like this. And I graph the full professors just to. Have you guys all left? Is anyone still there?
Hey, a lot of people are still here, and if you'd like, after this, we could switch to the Teams meeting because people want to ask you questions.
Yeah, and I just want to know if people are really mad at me for showing this data.
Oh, we're not mad at you. You didn't create those numbers.
Were you guys kind of aware of this stuff? Did you guys kind of know this?
Yes, yes, we're fully aware of it right now.
All right. So I don't mean to be I'm sorry, but this is what it is. So I looked at the distribution of how many tenure track, part-time, grad teaching you guys have versus everybody else. So this data comes from iPads and this. So here, what we see with this is you guys have a lower percentage of tenured, but very high tenure track, middle of the pack, non-tenure track. So that's kind of okay. The part-time usage, you're almost last in part-time usage. Now, again, you could yell at me if you like. What I conjectured is some of this could be due to location, as USM is in a small city, and 15 to 21 peers are either in large or medium-sized cities. So that's why it's easier to get part-time people to teach in a larger city. It's that simple. So in terms of graduate teaching assistants, you use them much less than your peers. You're 18th in the usage of graduate teaching assistants. And here's what I talked about very early on, the success. In terms of the Pell rates, you have the highest Pell rate, but your graduation rates are middle of the pack or even above the median in 4-year rates and 6-year rates. Again, where I work, this is about 10%, and that's about 38%. So and this is, we're at about 41, 42. So that's just, to me, this is really impressive to see these kind of graduation rates. I know you may not think they're high, but they are, at least from where I sit, but not just from my university, from my work I do in this area. So, and these are those Pell rates. There you are in the 6-year graduation rate. Nice, maybe a little ahead of the median. And so this is what I got yesterday, came out yesterday. The folks at AUP are very nice to me, and they shared the data with me. And there are three. The reason I was using iPads before, These three institutions, Cleveland State, Albany, and Louisiana Lafayette, do not report to the AUP survey for reasons that are unknown to me. So there were 19, there were 22, now there are 19. And in this is 2025 salaries. So I'm sorry to tell you this, but the situation has not gotten better. In fact, I think it's got a little worse in 25 than it was in 24. And 24 was a lot worse than 18. So the situation with faculty salaries is getting worse over time, which you already knew, but how could I not show you this? It came out yesterday, just I whipped it up and didn't, it took a little bit of time, but not much. And an hour or two later, here we got a nice table. So I thought I'd share that with you. I didn't know how it was going to come out. I had no idea what the results were going to be. I had a sense of it, but I'll stop there. So, all right, I'm ready to go whatever mode you tell me to go to. Want me to stop sharing, or you tell me what to do?
Well, so thanks a lot for this presentation. Kelly, could you stop recording this for a second? I think maybe I can.
Yes, either of us can. I'm working on it here.